Call the Finance Committee meeting to order. Everybody have a chance to take a look at the minutes.
Move to approve.
Second.
Got a motion second to approve. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Approved claims in the amount of $772,722.43.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion second to approve. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Officer carryover of unused comp time for FMLA.
I think between Jeff and I, we can probably tackle this one together. I don't know how you want to do it.
Hello. So with the new bargaining agreement contract, the city does not allow officers to carry over comp time from year to year anymore because of a tax rule. The only way to do that is with your approval, with my recommendation. So basically it's for unexpected circumstances that someone would need to carry this over. It's for the birth of a child to be able to take FMLA leave and get paid for it, and that's the reason that the request for the portion of unused comp time is requested to be carried over.
Move to
And Jeff
approve.
and I talked about this, and we just want to keep it narrow. And so we did think, if it's a catastrophic sort of thing or a birth of a child, we understand that those sort of things. I mean, you won't see many of these coming forward, but there will be some cases like this.
And the comp time will be used up by March 31st.
Yes.
Babies due in the first few months.
Yes,
Okay. So it'll follow that guideline,
that's correct.
okay?
Yeah, I already made the move to approve.
Second.
Motion second to approve. Discussion.
Gosh, how can you turn down for a baby?
Well, I think it's the sort of flexibility also that it's important to retain employees and to be a good workplace. So I think it's a measured decision, so I approve of it too. I think it's a good idea.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Discussion possible action to accept the 2022 alley repaving project and issue final payment.
Good evening, Finance Committee. So we have completed the 2022 alley repaving project. We repaved 2 alleys kind of close to St. Patrick's School this year. The project's been completed and the punch list has been completed as well. So the project is ready to be accepted and final payment issued to the contractor.
What was the second one?
The final punch list has been completed. The to-do list, essentially, of cleanup stuff.
We only did one alley?
2 blocks of alleys. So the 2 blocks we did is the alley that's adjacent to the St. Pat's parking lot,
Right.
and then the block south of there.
Okay.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion is second to approve. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. I don't have anything.
I would like to talk about the CapEx projects at our next meeting, whether
Okay.
it's in January or not. I just want to see where the disconnect was with the grants and the appropriations, and if it got derailed, can we fix it? Can we change it? Whatever.
Sure.
I wasn't happy, not hearing Higgins Street wasn't approved, Green Street has been pushed off. I want to talk that stuff through.
Okay. Sounds good. Anybody else? Do we have a motion?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Got a motion second to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. We stand adjourned. Thanks, everybody. All right, we will call the city council meeting to order. Everybody stand for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk, take the roll.
Mayor O'Connor.
Here.
Morissette.
Here.
Wakefield. Here. Knutson.
Here.
Kennedy.
Here.
Rook.
Here.
Hall.
Here.
Excellent. I thought I was prepared for this, but I'm not. All right, so, excuse me, first thing up is comments from citizens present. This is your opportunity to talk about issues that face the city. The issues cannot be on the agenda this evening, and please keep it short. Please try not to repeat what others say, and also please identify yourself and come to the podium, identify yourself, and give your address. So, is there anybody that has comment? Any comments? Yes, come on up.
Now, if you're here for the public hearing, that'll be next.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Thank you, Joyce. Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Hearing none, we'll close that portion of the agenda. Next is the public hearing. And this is a public hearing on the Diversity Committee. So, let me see here. I guess there's really no explanation on it, but it's on the Diversity Committee. Same thing, if you have a comment, please come to the podium and identify yourself. Please keep your comments short. Please also try not to repeat what others have to say. You must be a resident of the city in order to make a comment. So having said that, I think that we do have somebody on Zoom. Is that also?
We've got a few people on.
Two people on Zoom? Okay. So would anybody like to make a comment?
That's very annoying. Is this for the public hearing?
Yes, it is. We do have somebody at the podium right now, so we're just going to hold off, and we'll do the person at the podium. Welcome. Identify yourself, please.
Hi, my name is Antonina Kerner-McLeod. I live downtown here on Vine Street. I want to make a comment just in relation to the need for the Diversity Committee. I don't comment in general on, what the committee should do or how effective it has been or will be, but just the relevance of it. I'm a member of the Beth Emanuel Messianic Synagogue on 3rd Street here, and I just want you to know, and it to be a matter of public record, that we've seen a sharp increase in harassment, in some cases overtly anti-Semitic, and in other cases just plain heckling. In particular, there's been a sharp increase in the last 2 years. The most severe incident was in August, in the fall of 2021. I'd have to go back to look at notes, but just a series of altercations with a neighbor who lives at Orange and 5th Street. Series of altercations over a number of hours. Eventually, the police were called after he got in his car and was zooming around the synagogue parking lot really fast. But there's been just more minor things recently. Name calling, leering and jeering. There were 4 separate incidents on one day in August. One of them was as someone yelled "Jew" like from a car to my husband as he was walking at 4th and Vine. So things like this. Most of them have been minor, just kind of heckling. But I just want to let you know that this is happening. I feel you should know as the council, and we want neighbors to be aware. It is an issue, and I'm sure you're aware that anti-Semitism in general is on a rise in America in the past 5 years. According to the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, the 2021 was the highest highest number of recorded incidents in America since they have begun to keep records from 1979. I anticipate possibly a response of, oh, it's probably not a big deal. It's not so much a risk in our community. There's not we're not a big Jewish population center. It's not even a big town, everything. But in addition to the really big incidents nationally, such as a shooting at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, at the Chabad of Poway, that's in the San Diego area. Those were in 2018 and 2019. There's a Messianic synagogue in Cary, North Carolina, that had 2 incidents in November 2018 and December 2018, once of threatening voicemails, and then they were vandalized by a brick through the window and profanities spray painted. Thank heaven we haven't experienced any violence, but it doesn't start out of nowhere. So I just want to let you know and remind people that when residents and neighbors witness these things and fail to respond, we create a culture where these things are okay and accepted, and then people are emboldened to do more than just speak. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Who do we have on Zoom? Tried.
We've got 1, 2, 3. We've got 5 people on Zoom. So
How do you get chosen to talk?
I'm sorry, what?
Can we just talk if we're on Zoom, or do we need to?
Yeah, you would again need to identify yourself, please.
All right, can I talk then?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, my name is Nancy Christensen. I live on 4th Street in Hudson, Wisconsin, and I'm an individual that applied to be a member of the committee, and I felt like I represented my qualifications very well, but was turned down. My livelihood, my career is working with diverse individuals in the community, with employers, with students, in the school system, with a variety of different cities within Wisconsin and Minnesota. And I guess I just don't understand, and I know other people that did apply to be members of the committee and were turned down, who have multiple diverse backgrounds. I'm also Jewish. I live near Beth Emanuel. I know what they've been going through. And I believe that the committee is so important because of all the diversity that we do have in Hudson. But we also have people that are not accepting of that. And it's just so important that we have this committee so that we can educate, because hate is ignorance, and the diversity committee and inclusion can be so educational by providing events and education to Hudson. And I just feel like if we don't do this, we are so behind and so backwards, and we're a community that is a bedroom community to the Twin Cities. I think it would be really unfortunate if we don't have this committee continue. And I'd really like to know why the people that applied were not qualified, when I know almost all of them were qualified, between the diversity of their academic, their environment, their educational background, their financial, and their cultural. They were all diverse. I'd like to know what the mayors or whoever made the decision not to have these people on the committee, what their definition of diversity is. Thank you.
Thank you. Carrie?
Okay, so this was not planned, but one of the handouts that I just passed around was this Anti-Defamation League Pyramid of Hate, and I'll reference this. My name is Carrie Rice. I live at 1470 Lee Circle, and I have some prepared comments. With liberty and justice for all. That's what we say, right, in the Pledge of Allegiance. We all say this. But when we say all, do we really mean all? And that is, I think, the question before us in this community, in this country. And how we recognize diversity. When I grew up in Prescott, Wisconsin, my exposure to differences was very limited. You were either Catholic or Protestant, or I even thought of them as Catholic in public because I went to parochial school. The cemetery overlooking the convergence of the Mississippi and the St. Croix River was divided to two entrances. There was the Catholic and the Protestant entrance, and there was a fence between. I'm happy to say there is no fence anymore. It needed maintenance, and everybody said, hey, we might just share the same afterlife. I'm just guessing here. Yeah, thank you for laughing, because we need a little humor. As one of the leaders of the Hudson Inclusion Alliance, I've heard some heartbreaking stories from residents about how they're treated here, sometimes with disdain and unwelcome comments, and we heard a few already. My family has personally experienced this. My 2 children are adopted from Korea. There's sometimes Asians are considered the invisible minority, but believe me, they're not invisible today. Some of the comments directed at them and my grandchildren include, did you come in the right way? Time to go back where you came from. And they came as infants. So this is, and sometimes these are said at the worst possible day. I mean, we all have good days and bad days, but when this comes from, sometimes it really cuts. And another one, your people are bringing in the virus. That's kind of new. And yet, those kind of comments don't even scratch the surface. I've heard some things that I will not repeat because it might disclose who it came from. I encourage all of you to expand your definition of what you think of as diversity beyond race. You need to include all people when you look at this, not just those who look, love, believe, and vote the same way as you or even differently than you. I understand that some folks were hurt a couple years ago when they were declared as a hate group or they were accused of racism, and for that I feel bad because none of us wants to feel like we're on that side of the equation, and yet the rhetoric continues. I encourage those of you who are active with political parties to help your leaders to moderate the more extreme actions of your members. That's a hard thing to do. But our problems are not unique. Historic changes in rural and urban populations, economic change, expansion of unfettered and frankly irresponsible social media, the political divisions in a pandemic was a pretty toxic stew. They've made it difficult for all leaders to govern, and we see this. We see this everywhere. It's hard for our school board. It's hard for everyone. I've handed out the Anti-Defamation League Pyramid of Hate because I think it's what I go back to when I ask, where is this coming from? And in particular, at the very bottom of the base, how can we address this? The stereotyping, insensitive remarks, fear of difference. One of the candidates that ran for city council a couple of years ago said, there are people here who are trying to push diversity on us, and I have no idea where that comes from. But Hudson already is diverse, and it's increasing. It's increasing. As to the topic of the diversity committee, it might come as a surprise to you that I'm not convinced it's the right approach, but I also think doing nothing is not the right approach. Perhaps we consider it a bridge to a new, more inclusive community and give them some specific power. I think that's the challenge we had before, was it was a committee of people who were good intention, but they didn't really, they were storming and norming, and sometimes anger came out, and there was a little bit of herding cats. So some ideas to consider, to give them some specific power, include have the committee align with the work that's already being done here in our community by the Golden Rule Committee, the faith communities, our arts, our library, our service groups, our civics groups, and help to bring them to a new level. One of the things that happened in Prescott is they have a group of leaders that are asked to come forward and say, what does this community need? And that then informs, and it can be everything from recognizing alcoholism into your family or dealing with anxious teens. It doesn't have to be limited to diversity and inclusion, but it's about building a healthier community. And those then inform community outreach and service, and they're executed by other community groups. We need a proactive approach that intentionally unites our community and tries to pierce through those tribal bubbles that we all kind of run back to, especially when we're afraid. Another one is to ask the committee to assist in developing educational programs that can help blunt the impact of that what I call the industrial rage complex, which is otherwise known as the internet and social media. We all need to learn how to not only unplug, but how to interpret the stuff that's coming at us, because it just fuels that part of the brain that really gets activated. We can all walk around with our hair on fire all the time, and that's not healthy. Another one is we can learn from residents who work at companies where they value diversity as a strength. Our industries, and Randy mentioned before the meeting, he's on a board, and you're doing some diversity, equity, inclusion training. For a lot of those folks, this kind of language is not unusual or different, the language of inclusion. It's how you build healthy and trusting teams. Now, a few years ago, this body approved membership in something called the National League of Cities. And to my knowledge, it was never used. It was like $1,500 or $1,800. Access to a website, access to conference, access to resource. You know, it predates Erin joining the town, and you know, I think we can look at that again and say maybe the diversity committee can look at that and say, what here can we plug into? What can we use? Including things like surveys and measurements. And then the YMCA. They've come before this group several times. The Y can help us to understand that we all have bias. We all have bias. If you exclude racism or any other ism and you say, well, wait a minute here, do I have bias? You very quickly learn that we do all have it, and it's something we always have to work on. It's kind of buried in our brain. One of my favorite quotes comes from George W. Bush. And he said, too often we judge others by their worst examples while judging ourselves by our best intentions. One of you asked, is this the business of government? My answer is an unequivocal yes. As leaders of our community, you can't outsource the culture. It's the job of all our leaders to tear down those fences that divide us and help to affirm that liberty and justice really means for all. If any of you want to meet with me individually, I'd be happy to do so. Thank you and bless you.
Thanks, Carrie. Anybody else?
Can I make a comment?
Yes, go ahead.
This is Addison Filiatro. I live in Hudson. First, I want to thank Sarah Brook for redrafting the diversity committee proposal. I also wanted to thank Joy Knutson for reaching out to various people to get input. And I appreciate the guidance that's given into the new proposal, and want a couple of things to be added. That one of the guidelines would be to help with outreach to organizations that are available and help people find other people with similar backgrounds to make it feel more welcoming. And I appreciate the staggering of terms so there isn't turnover, because the 1-year timeline was difficult. As far as the 5 organizations that choose members, I would like to request that a high school senior be able to apply. This was a suggestion last time that didn't have follow through. And it's a great opportunity to have leadership at a youth level that can continue into their adult life. Furthermore, I would like there to be clarification for how members will be chosen within these groups, because there's the possibility of limiting who they might pick based on who's most involved with whatever the church, or who's most involved with the business community. And if that's the way that it's done, then it doesn't have the same type of outreach. The library might be a great resource because they've done a lot of programs and they have a lot of connections. So I would hope that you would consider having them be a member of the working group that chooses someone. And another place to look would be the Bridge for Community Life, or another organization that works with people with disabilities. Since I understand that Hudson's a really old town and there's not always a ton that we can do, but they can have ideas to brainstorm for how to make the city more accessible. So I agree with the proposal, just with some changes, and obviously I've made plenty of comments and sent plenty of emails that I think that this is necessary for the city. That's all.
Thank you. Any other comments?
My name is Cy Houston. I live at 616 Grandview Drive here in Hudson, and I didn't plan to speak on this tonight, but as I'm sitting here, I'm thinking, how do I feel about this whole diversity committee exclusion? The fact that you somehow decided to not have a diversity committee was, one, disappointing and a little bit scary. We live in the fastest growing county in Wisconsin. And you know, and I know, where those folks are coming from. They come across the river from the Twin Cities, which is totally, it's one of the best places to run across diversity of all kinds. And to ignore that would be irresponsible on your part, because that's where our new residents are coming from. Recently, I was at a school board meeting because I wanted to speak out on some of the issues of school administration advice, actually a direction that came from the superintendent down through the principals to the counselors, that if you have a student, and the wording by the superintendent was, if the student expects something different than what their parents signed up for, we need to advise the parent. Well, that administrative gobbledygook, and I can tell you, I was the 30-year school administrator, superintendent. I know about administrative gobbledygook. That wording, actually, when the superintendent explained it, meant if you're a kid who feels like they might be a little bit diverse, and maybe they don't know what their gender is, and they don't want to be called by a particular name, we need to tell the parents. So if you don't want to come out, we'll come out for you. We'll come out for you. We'll set you up with the parents. That is not how you deal with these issues. And that's I spoke out there to say it absolutely makes no sense. It's the wrong thing to do. To ignore the issues of diversity, whether it's gender or race or religion or school of thought, is very dangerous. We have a past president who just recently hosted men who said openly anti-Semitic views. Yeah, that's it. That's cool. We're white Americans. We're nationalists. We think that ought to be, white men ought to run this country. And to ignore that is a foolish way to administer any level of government, especially at the city level. One last comment is, when you look at people who are buying into Hudson, they're coming in, they're not the new young families with little kids. Talk to the school district about what's going on with school populations. It's middle-aged people coming in here, people with money, and they represent another kind of diversity. So to ignore a diversity committee and to not have one just doesn't make sense, especially if you're the major political body in this town. I encourage you to rethink that whole position, take a new stand on it.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I have a comment. My name is Tamara Butler. I live on 5th Street in the city of Hudson. I, like Nancy, was an applicant for the diversity committee, and I was, well, I wasn't exactly rejected. There was no reply, but, you know, obviously was seen as not appropriate as someone for the diversity committee. And I, like Nancy, I'm wondering why. You know, I represent a minority religious group. I represent, in my work life, have worked with diverse populations, both people with disabilities and people from minority communities, quite extensively. And I'm just curious why the committee wasn't repopulated with the citizens who chose to step forward and serve and help Hudson become welcoming to all people. And that's all I have to ask.
Thank you. Any other comments? Hey, Paul.
Good evening, council members, Mr. Mayor, city staff. I'm Paul DeZiel. I'm Laurel Avenue here in Hudson. I want to welcome Alderperson Wakefield too. Thanks for serving. Just a couple comments, and mine are more restricted to the proposal that you guys have been working on. And as a person who worked on the original, I have to say this is an upgrade. This is good. This is better. This is better than my work, Randy. So A couple thoughts on why. Number one, and we've heard, I really appreciate your comments tonight. It's important to set a tone for the city, number one. It's just important, it's critical. Number two, I think why we need a diversity committee or a DEI advisory committee as it's written up now is it's in our city comp plan. So the city has already gone through the process of listening to a lot of voices and working on future goals. It's in the comp plan. I'm a little bit unsure on how we make progress without such a committee. I'm not sure where the expertise is. So I think it's to the advantage of the city council and the city to do that. My next point is I really, really like the rethinking of the partnership. I love the 5 groups listed in there. It's really talking about the city working as a partner with the school board, the Chamber of Commerce, the Hudson YMCA, which we already know is a leader in the community in this issue, and local churches. I think that's a great recipe for moving forward because it's really your key players in the city and a lot of different interests. I think that guarantees you're going to have competent individuals. I think that guarantees you're going to have professionalism. And some of those were the things that were lacking kind of first round through. So I think whoever came up with that, kudos to you. Just a couple thoughts on, and I don't know whether you're going to vote on this tonight or kind of rethink something, but a couple of thoughts that I had when I was reading the proposal. I might remove or suggest removing the city resident. It's under the membership piece. And the only reason I would do that is I would like it to be, for sure, a majority of Hudson City residents, for sure. But I remember last time around, Chris Koss from the YMCA, who's the director, applied or wanted to apply. He looked into applying, and he doesn't technically live within the city of Hudson, and so he couldn't be on it. But I'm thinking, why would we not want the best people who are really involved in Hudson, like the Y, on the committee? So I might relax that or maybe take that line out and just say, you know, it's got to be people vested in the city, but maybe they don't live within the city boundaries. The second thing is where it talks about the mission of committee. I just want to make sure I get this right here, sorry. So it says the committee advocates for racial, ethnic, and ability diversity and fosters cultural awareness and understanding. Just an encouragement to broaden that a little bit. Some of the people here said this already, but you might want to think about adding in age, for example. You might want to think about socioeconomic status, for example. You might want to think about the LGBTQ community, for example. You might want to think about education levels. There could just be a little bit broader mission, I guess. It all depends on what you guys think is best, right? And then 2 last points. One is I love the 5 partnership working together. You may want to consider adding just a at-large member. Again, we've heard some people who wanted to be on the committee tonight, and I don't know if there would be a way, if you're not a member of these, you know, specific organizations, or at-large member, 2 at-large members, something like that. Again, then you'd have to open yourself up to the process of how you choose those, so I understand that that's a difficult thing. And then the last point is just, it's just strictly encouraging. I want to just say, diversity works hard. It's hard. We struggled the first round through with this, but I'm glad we tried it. We found out what didn't work, right? But that doesn't mean other things can't work. And so I just really ask for your commitment as city leaders. And I know you all care about the city. I worked with a lot of you guys. I know your heart is in the right place. And so I just want to say this isn't easy. Diversity, you don't like flip your fingers and go, here's in 6 months and we have no diversity. You know, it's not like that. It's not a magic wand. It's a commitment level. And I know, Mr. Mayor, I know you have a real commitment to this, and I admire that. I know that you worked on the campaign for the first black mayor, first black city council member in St. Paul, right, years ago, which I totally appreciate. So I think that your commitment and leadership will be really important too, and just trying to figure out kind of the next way forward. So I just encourage you all to keep working. It's hard work, but if we're on the right track, good things will come. So appreciate it. Thank you guys for your service.
Thanks, Paul. Anybody else? Any other comments? Any other comments? Any other comments?
Move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to close the public hearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is approved. Public hearing is closed. Discussion and possible action on diversity committee.
Well, if I can just start off by thanking people for coming tonight, because I know how hard it is and what sensitive topics were shared and immense courage. So I am grateful and appreciative and have heard what you have shared. And it affirms to me that we do need to keep moving forward. And perhaps you've all had a chance to review the updates to the existing or to the prior Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee that we started with. And I guess I'd like to get feedback on what we heard tonight and people's opinions on it. But for me personally, this public hearing affirms that we absolutely have to keep moving forward and that this is super hard. And but all good things are. All good things are. And we are the leaders, and we've heard from folks that they would really like this to continue.
Well, I agree with Sarah, and I too am grateful that people stepped up. It takes real courage to come and talk about this, talk about personal experiences, and to you put themselves out there with that information. And I just think that this should be a no-brainer that we continue on and keep working towards the goal of making Hudson welcoming to all.
I agree, and I appreciate everybody's comments. It kind of brings a little more meaning to it now that I've heard some of the comments that were made, and that maybe we are pushing in the right direction finally, and we have to move past what was done in the past and move forward with these new ideas and with these other entities getting involved. And I want more time to put it all together. I don't think we need to rush a vote tonight, just my opinion, because there's a lot more structure to be complete and a lot more of these questions that were asked of us need to be answered thoughtfully and then put out as a solution.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I would like to see.
Well, last time we had several of us that got together to go over the proposal and to refine it, and I'd like to suggest that we do that again, that those of us who are in favor of it get together to go over the proposal and refine it.
And perhaps if it's going to be a situation where we do have a quorum, we could,
Well, we can make it a public meeting and invite the people who have come here to make their comments and ask them to be a part of this as well. I mean, that's the goal, is to get people involved in making the city better.
Well, again, I want to second and third that I appreciate people who came and spoke tonight and shared their personal input and experiences, and that's important and it's valued, absolutely. We hear your message and what you're saying, and I am sorry for the experiences that you have based on the stories that you're sharing. That is unfortunate, and unfortunately, I don't know that we'll ever change human nature. People do hard things to each other, and that is unfortunate. I see a few things different to address back to your comments, Sarah, and again, so thank you for everyone that came or tuned in or commented online. As Addison referred to, I did reach out to a couple of people that had spoken to me. In fact, Paul and I had coffee together a couple weeks ago to talk, because I know that's an important issue for him, and he has worked hard on this committee. And so I wanted to get his input and ideas on the reasoning behind it. I do notice one thing that you've mentioned here, Sarah, and I wasn't involved before in the formation of the original committee, but I know it was specifically chosen to be just diversity committee. And I think there were some discussions about that then, and now the verbiage is diversity, equity, inclusion, and you added the word advisory. So could you comment on that, what you were thinking there?
Actually, the very first document that went out that we voted on, I think Aaron sent it to me, and it did say diversity, equity, and inclusion. Is that right?
What the first document that you worked off of was the original document that, as Joyce mentioned, that subcommittee.
Okay.
But what's attached was actually what ultimately ended up getting adopted
Okay.
by the council. So that is the difference.
So you know.
You go ahead, but tell me about the word advisory. What are you thinking different there? Because I see you've chosen a few different words.
Yeah.
Are you thinking it's more of an ad hoc committee versus, I've expressed before my concern about city-appointed committees that they may be subject to rules about communication amongst each other and the potential for open records requests. And so are you hoping to set this up in a different way?
So a few points, just to thank you for this discussion. One, I know you said that we might never make the changes, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't try, in my opinion. And sometimes the steps forward feel like they're baby steps, and sometimes they're big steps. So, but with respect to meetings, I think we have it set up quarterly in the proposal. I think that was something I had shared. And advisory, even though that was the intent before, that terminology wasn't there, but strictly it would be to bring forward ideas to the council for the council to decide whether or not to move forward with. So it strictly is a body that would provide advice and suggestions, and then council would ultimately be able to make the decision. But nonetheless, I want to follow up with what Councilmember Morissette shared with the need for additional discussion and talk on this. And perhaps the best thing would be for us to set up another meeting for us to go back and really work this out and see how to move forward.
Okay. Thank you. And I do want to clarify that I don't mean to diminish that people's life experiences. And yes, people do learn. That's how we identify our own biases, is to recognize, I reacted a certain way and I shouldn't be, based on a situation in our personal life. So that's very important to do that work. And I find it interesting, Sarah, because as you know, previously I've commented on how many wonderful organizations we already have in Hudson that are nonprofits, churches, the Y. I did sit down also and have coffee with Carrie Rice, who was very instrumental in starting the Hudson Inclusion Alliance. And, that's already in place as a way to help reach out and to meet those needs and help people to kind of find the place to have someone come alongside them as they enter our community, or maybe they've lived here many years, but trying to find some like-minded people or some encouragement or others that share their ideas and interests. And so I thought that was interesting that you decided to go that route in your recommendation. I assume this is mostly your work, and thank you for the work you put in on it, that you mentioned some of those groups, because I do think we have a very strong community that way. How do we direct people? How do we help people find the spot where they feel comfortable, where they have found a niche? So that's a question. I think there's a lot already present in Hudson, and I want to elevate and amplify what they're doing and helping people to know that those resources are available.
And I think you raised an interesting point that I forgot to address, so I'd like to circle back to that if I could, where you talk about the open records. Maybe that's a discussion for us to talk about with other committees, because we have that with all sorts of community members who serve on Plan Commission and those sorts of things. So they're all open for, subject to open records. So perhaps that could be a good educational opportunity for all that serve on our committees. So.
From a drafting perspective, with respect to this draft, I do think it's important, particularly if you wind up with membership that includes individuals who are selected from by other organizations within the community, that we make clear that this is a committee of the city of Hudson, so that there's no ambiguity as to the fact that it is a city committee and that it will be subject to open records and open meetings, subject to notice requirements. Because I think the distinction that you've referenced is that your other committees are city committees. And I'm pretty certain from the draft here that the intent is for this committee to be a city committee as well. But we should just make that very clear, just so that there's no question moving forward.
And a community member tonight raised the topic of potentially having somebody outside of the city limits. I do know we have somebody else on another committee that doesn't live in the city, so perhaps that is something we could consider for this as well.
Yeah, and as I read through this, and thanks for the work, 'cause I compared the two, and like Paul said, it's an upgrade, no offense to Paul's earlier work. But back to Paul too, I think we all, 99% of this document, I think we all agree on. I won't speak for everyone, but I guess my question is, and if we have further discussion and wherever this goes, is I guess I'd just like to set us up to answer the following question. Does this need to be tethered to the city? Does this need to be a sitting committee? What gets accomplished with that can't be accomplished with the YMCA and other religious groups? You refer to them as a social institution serving our community. I just don't see the city, this building, these 6 members, the mayor, I don't see them as a social institution necessarily. I think we're separate from what the Y does, what the library does, and what religions do. So again, my question I think would be, that I need answered is, why does this have to be tethered as a sitting city group, as opposed to a social group? It doesn't take away from any of the goals or any of the things we're trying to reach for as a community if we don't have the city there. I think it can function without that.
And I'd be happy if anybody else wanted to weigh in this, but I think government is part of social change, and if government hadn't done some change, there might be 4 of us that wouldn't be sitting here.
But I don't know if that was the government or the people. I think social change forced the hand to the government, and we have an open mic night every 2 weeks here, that when there is an issue, no matter what it is, that people can come up and they can even zoom into it. So I totally follow what you're saying, but generally it's the social grassroots groups that force the hand of the government to say, we're either outdated, we're doing something wrong, or we have the wrong beliefs, etc. And that's where the change comes.
Maybe that's what happened tonight.
It might be a little bit of protection for the committee if it was not tethered, in your words, to the city. Because regardless if it was ad hoc or advisory, still open records law. Now, I don't know how the YMCA works, or they're a private or whatever. Might be a little more protection for members if that's a concern. You know what I'm saying? Because I'd hate to have somebody's personal life dragged out because they're volunteering to do good for the community. And then for some hateful reason or something gets drawn out under a public records request. That would look terrible.
Well, we all take that risk. And some of the things that having the city sponsor it, first of all, we'd have city leadership to be continuing to look at it and see that it's on the right track. They'd have a place to meet because they'd be able to meet here in City Hall. you know, it's possible too that there might be some grants available or something like that, where if we've got a city committee, we might be eligible for those. I haven't looked into anything like that, but you have to have you usually have to have infrastructure in order to.
We could have city representation on that committee to keep us informed.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
You know, and anybody, I don't know, you can write grants, I don't know if you could do it as, if it's a group charged by the ministerial association, let's say, they can write grants.
That's true.
So there are other avenues, not just city offices.
No, there aren't, but, it sounds like we need to digest this and continue working on it and just get a more defined proposal.
It's a lot better place than we were.
Mm-hmm.
And I thank you too for the work you did. But there's a lot of questions to be answered, and we have to do it right.
Well, I'm totally happy to keep doing some more legwork on this, and perhaps I could work with our city attorney and with Aaron on trying to address some of those concerns and bring back a more detailed approach and potential ordinance if folks are thinking that that is the right step to go. It is certainly, I think we've heard from enough folks. I think the initial concern was that there wasn't issues happening here, and I do think there are issues happening here, and that it's important that we do step in front of that. And I'd like to see us continue moving forward with this. And obviously, so would the citizens that we represent. And someone made reference to our comprehensive plan, and there are 7 core commitments in there that was approved by the Plan Commission, that was approved by the council, that is to direct us through 2040, and it's what our community has asked us to do.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
So what's the next step is, I think a good question. Sarah, working with.
Should I put forward a motion to continue this, or do we have enough discussion for me to continue working on this?
I would just table it for now, work on it and bring it back. We'll take it off the table and move it forward.
Okay.
Does that work?
All right.
Could you advise on what that means that it's tabled? It just means that, like you said, it's set aside.
Well, to
Would have
table
to be
it,
brought
I think
forward
would
again.
take an actual motion to table it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
But yeah, basically, it's set aside and then it's brought back at some future date for further discussion
It
by the
could
council.
be a different version of it, or would we have to?
Right.
Yeah.
You know, so I guess for my clarification, I think it would be, if you're tabling it, it would be to then also direct Sarah to continue to work on with, you know, myself and Nick, or that she continues to work to refine a proposal to bring back, so that there's something that's going to be coming back then to the council for discussion at some point.
Yeah, and I think a clearer motion might be a motion to continue discussion till a later date, when a revised policy can be presented after consultation with Aaron and myself, or whomever needs to be involved in that discussion.
So moved.
Tabling still does the same thing.
Same concept.
You need a motion to take off the table and things. I mean, it is.
Yeah, I'd prefer not to table it then.
So Joyce did say so moved, so I would be happy to second that.
all right, so we got a motion and a second.
What's the motion?
What Nick said about.
Motion to continue discussion
Continue it.
until a later date.
You mean Robert's Rules definition of the table?
Oh, boy.
Okay.
Everybody good? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Consent agenda.
Approve the meeting minutes from November 21st, 2022 regular council meeting. Approve the claims in the amount of $772,722.43. Approve officer carryover of unused comp time for FMLA. Approve the 2023 Common Council calendar. Approve the 2022 alley repaving project and issue final payment. And approve the 2023 fee schedule.
Move to approve.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to approve consent. Roll call.
Morissette?
Yes.
Wakefield?
Yes.
Knutson?
Yes.
Kennedy?
Yes.
Brooke?
Yes.
Hall?
Yes.
Motion's approved. Consent agenda is approved. Discussion possible action regarding approval of plans and specifications for the 3rd Street Laurel Avenue project and authorization to send the project out to bid. Dean?
Good evening, council
Evening.
members. So let me get my plan sets together here. So before you tonight, first project that we have, we're looking for approval of plans and specifications for the 3rd Street Laurel Avenue project and authorization to send the project out to bid. We've completed the revised plans for the 3rd Laurel project, which includes essentially what we had previously discussed, which is reconstructing the area around the bluff that's the retaining wall is failing around the corner. But then because we've had this extra time to look at the project again and plan accordingly, we've also added in replacing the pavement back down to Walnut Street, which is essentially the original scope of the project. And the pavement heading down the hill is not in good shape, so we feel that it's worth taking advantage of the larger project to get that all done. So you got a link to the project plans and specifications in the issue sheet. So we have budgeted for this project as has been approved in the 2022, or excuse me, the new CIP. Which carried over money from the 2022 CIP that we didn't use because we didn't construct the project this year. And then also we have a local roads improvement program grant for almost $500,000 to contribute towards this project. So if the plans and specs are approved tonight, the project would go out to bid sometime in the next week, and then bids would be opened at the end of January, and then the bids would be considered a Public Works Committee in February, and then hopefully approved by City Council in February as well for construction in the spring. Any questions? Oh, actually first before that, usually our process is to take these, the Public Works Committee first before coming to Council. Because this is my last meeting with you guys tonight, we felt that it'd be worth it to have this come before Council while I'm still here, so that I can adequately answer any of your questions while I'm still around, in case there's any changes that need to be made or any comments on them. So with that, any questions, comments, concerns?
Was there a start date on the bid?
We have not written one in yet, but we can if that's. I think getting it done sooner than later is probably a good thing because
That's my point.
Too, so I would. Yeah, we can certainly put that in there. I wouldn't start the project probably sooner than April or May 1st or something like that because you can't really do too much in the spring while it's still melting and all that stuff up there. But yeah, we want to make sure that it gets done early in the construction season if possible. Yep.
I'll move we approve it and with an early start date
I'll second
to be
that.
determined by staff before you leave.
Will do.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
We got a motion and a second to approve. Discussion?
I'd like to make a couple of comments. First of all, I wanted to thank you, Dean, for your service to the city, and we will miss you as our city engineer and wish you well in your next position. We did waive, the 3 Public Works meeting members here waived our chance to talk about this, but we have talked about it before.
True.
But
Yeah.
Dean and Mike had come forward with the idea that if we discuss it tonight, it'll be more efficient, we'll get the bids rolling sooner. And so as a group, we have discussed a number of these, certainly which street gets crack sealed and some of those issues. Pretty much we trust the judgment of our professional staff on making those decisions. I think all of us are really committed. I can't speak for you two, but I think it's a big focus that we do the 3rd Street Hill, no matter what.
Absolutely.
It has to be
Yes.
done. And so it's really important, and I think I appreciate that's a lot of the thinking, is to bring that forward so that we can get some bids, identify a contractor. It is a unique project. It is a big project to put that retaining wall in and to make it safe for generations to come. And so that is really high on our list, and we are, fingers crossed that it'll be a bid that we can manage. We have the LRIP grant, which thank you for your work in obtaining that, Dean. And we have to use that by what deadline?
2025. So we
And
do-
that's Wisconsin-based.
Yep, that's a state.
So we do have a little time to use that, and we have to at least match that dollar amount. Is that
Yeah, it's actually a 90-10 match. They gave us some revised. It's up to that amount though. It's not any more than that. So we have the estimated project cost is something like $1.3 million. So we're not close.
We're paying
to,
our good share of
right,
it. Yes,
right.
and I think we're just going to have to, we'll see. We may have to make some hard decisions about the rest of the city while we shore up that hill. And it is one of the blessings of living in a historic older town is we have some infrastructure and some streets that are unfortunately quite costly and need work. But we all love Hudson and all the unique parts about it. But I think, in my opinion, that'll be a key factor, is finding that out. And by the time some of the decisions were made last year, it was a little late in the season. It was a difficult season. And so absolutely what you're saying, Randy, is we want to get a jump on this, hopefully identify a contractor with a bid that we can manage and that they'll be ready to go in the spring. So.
Yeah, I'll just say too, thank you, Joy, for saying that. We're hitting the bidding season at a really ideal time now versus the last time we put this out to bid was a bit late in the season, so to speak, for bidding. So, and I don't know what material and labor prices are going to be in the spring, but I think things have cooled off a bit since the hecticness. Yeah, I'm not gonna wood, but from what I'm seeing, it looks like things have cooled off a bit, at least for those prices. At least the skyrocketing is kind of plateaued, hopefully a bit. So that will hopefully mean better prices for these bids and more availability for contractors to do it next year as well.
Anybody else? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Thank you, Dean. And also, thank you so much for your service here to the city. You've done a great job.
Thank you.
You will be missed. Thanks for being here tonight. I appreciate that. And best wishes in what you do in the future.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
I think I've got the next one here too. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's why I'm still here. Don't want to wear out my welcome, but yeah.
I thought you were crying.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was worried I might forget. Discussion and possible action regarding approval of plans and specifications for the 2023 street maintenance project and authorization to send the project out to bid.
All right. So again, this one is one that we've been working on for getting out to bid yet this winter here. You're provided a link to the plans and specifications, but just to for the sake of everybody here, we're looking to, that's our street maintenance project. Usually involves crack filling, which is like what it sounds, filling cracks, and then chip sealing and fog sealing. So that's essentially adding in a layer of oil, adding rock on top, and then the fog seal comes back and adds another layer of oil on top. Kind of makes a new driving surface that can be weared on instead of the old pavement, and that usually lasts 5 to 10 years, kind of depending on how much traffic is beating down on it. So we try to do these chip seal and fog seal projects on streets that have decent to good rated pavement, because what you're sealing underneath is what you're sealing underneath. So if you're sealing good stuff underneath, that keeps the roads in good shape for longer. If you're trying to seal roads that are not in good shape, then they don't last as long anyway. So there's a list of the streets that we're looking to do in this issue sheet. Other than that, I will take any questions.
What was the total cost on all these?
For all of these streets, I believe the construction cost was close to $800,000.
I've questioned this many times over. We're doing newer streets that were just done again and others. You know, it just, when we have failing streets, could that money be used better off? It's a catch-22, I get it. But there's a lot of new streets, Darnold Drive on there, South Point, Summit Ridge, they're new. There's other streets that could need attention.
Well, so staff's recommendation is that we want to keep those streets in good shape. And obviously it's up to the council to decide whether that's the priority you want to set or not, but it's so much easier to keep a good street in good condition than it is to take a bad street and put it into good condition, if that makes sense for
Yeah, it's like you said,
cost-wise.
Randy, it's a catch-22. We're trying to maintain the good ones while we are dedicating more funding starting now next year to do better reconstructs on some of those worse ones, so then we can do more of this to those in the future, which is cheaper. So we're sort of rolling through it as we go here and adding more to it, but we are going to be able to do more work on these worse streets moving forward with the additional funding we're approving. And then that way in the future, you'll see those get added to this rotation. So, you know, we're getting there, and, you know, it'll take some time. More money you throw at it, the better we're at.
Yeah.
More we can do.
There's just, yeah.
Aaron, if I could just clarify, and Randy, you and I are on the same page on this one.
We normally always are. We say it
Nice.
differently.
Okay, anyways, moving on. Aaron, you said that we're working towards getting that, but right now with the money that we've earmarked or set aside or budgeted for 2023, these are the roads and streets that are being done in 2023.
With this work, but because we have additional money now, we're gonna do more of that reconstruct sort of thing on the bad streets like Randy's talking about. So we're still addressing the bad streets now because we have more money to do so. This is for these projects. This isn't everything that we're gonna be doing. This is 800 and some thousand of that roughly $2 million. So there's still, 1.2 million that's gonna be used for other sort of projects next year too. And those will be coming forward in the future.
You mean Green Street? She wanted to approve Green Street.
So we're definitely doing both. All we're approving tonight is these sort of projects.
Okay.
But we're also using that additional money that was approved by the council with the CIP to start addressing some of those roads that Randy's talking about, so that they'll be in better shape, that we can actually add them to this sort of list versus not wanting to do them, not wanting to throw this sort of project and money on top of a bad street that's going to go bad again quickly. Instead, we're going to take that new money, fix those streets, and then add them to this list where we can keep doing them and maintain them longer.
And there's a chance that our projections that we have, we might have access to more money, and we made the commitment at the last meeting to relook at that in case there's more money.
Yep.
So that we could make sure that those streets that are in dire, a little bit more dire, and maybe aren't the arterial streets or the busy streets, but yet very important.
Yep.
So when do you set priorities for the new money?
Pardon?
When do you set the priorities, the streets, with the additional money, the new money?
At Public Works Committee.
Yes. And,
As I say,
you
public
again.
safety or what?
So-
I love having this discussion with the group, and I think it's important that we talk about these issues as a group and not just one committee, approves it, but we did, again, forego the opportunity to discuss all this to expedite the bidding process, and we will keep, and we want the input, and we're gonna have to see what the prices are and things, and staff recommendations on how we do spend the additional money. Certainly, as refer to my prior comments, I do think we have to sit tight until we see what Third Street Hill is gonna cost us and be prepared to pay for that work.
No doubt.
and
We've been hearing about these streets over there for years, for at least 4 years.
You remember 6th Street, Joyce, has been buried. I mean, that was falling apart how many years ago? Is it 6th Street or 8th Street?
Ninth,
One-
yeah,
yeah.
ninth is,
It's
One of them.
yes.
flip the other way.
I thought 6th. Well,
Yeah. So you could pick a number and it'd be pretty much.
Anywhere from,
so your question, was it to me?
No.
Prioritizing?
It was a rhetorical question to anybody that might answer it. I really think that these streets need to be prioritized.
absolutely.
So Dean has done a
Yeah.
good job with that. Public Works has seen some of the initial
We've
stuff.
worked on it, and
The
we've
council's
talked
seen
about
it too, if you remember, we talked about that transportation utility about a year
Yeah.
ago.
Yeah.
You know, Dean laid out
Absolutely.
all of our condition of our streets, this long list of, here's how much it would actually take us to catch up now, and how we can do it, and so we have them prioritized out, and that's what Public Works Committee and ultimately the council will be talking about early next year, is what projects are we gonna go to bid for, all that sort of stuff. So it'll be coming back soon again to the council.
Yeah, specifically in Public Works Committee next week, we're going to be talking about the divvying up of that $2 million for the street maintenance part of the CIP, what that will go to. These two projects will be, spoiler alert, part of 2023. But then it also shows kind of what we're looking at for the next 5 years with the funding levels that have been approved. And so that, after the Public Works meeting, will come to council early January to probably have this discussion in January about, is this where we're heading with the infrastructure portion of our CIP. Hopefully I didn't speak out of turn there. Yeah.
One of the difficulties is there are some streets that are in more isolated areas of town that are in tough shape, there's no doubt about it. But the ones that are in tough shape, that are high traffic, you know, it's probably the right thing to address them first. So everyone, we all have a different street in our mind maybe that could use some work or that we think is most serious. But again, that is part of the work of the Public Works Committee, but we want your input, certainly, and we're going to dig into that. So you can look at this as just kind of a big committee report here tonight where we're all working together on it, and we appreciate your input, but we're going to keep working.
I've said it before many years over, it shouldn't matter what part of the city you live in, you should get equal service to the street regardless. I understand the busier ones should, but it's no different than we shouldn't be doing alleys, if that's the point. And then that money should be going to the main arteries. I mean, when was this list put together? Have we seen this before? The maintenance?
Randy, it was put together, I will go back again. It would have gone to Public Works this month.
This
Well,
one?
Yes, this list.
So this is the first time?
Well,
we got-
yes, and we have discussed them in some generalities, but again, the professional staff has a ranking, we have the PASER ratings, I know you know all those details. We would have worked it through as a committee and discussed it and hashed some of it out, but because we wanted to utilize Dean's expertise, because
Yeah, I get
we will
that.
soon have to contract for a city engineer until we're able to hire someone. So he's trying to be useful as much as possible in his last weeks here, and came up with this idea that we're asking, you know, to let them move forward. As much as I understand the process, there's still voting that happens right up to the moment practically. Like this last year, the price of asphalt was so high that we weren't able to do trail maintenance because we had made the decision to do the alley projects because they were in pretty tough shape. So some of those decisions might be sort of game time decisions, if you will, when, you know, it's May and we find out what the price is for seal coating or, you know, so we continue to work on that. But yes, you're seeing this list with us simultaneously, partly because we're trying to move the process forward of starting to get those bids. And I hear what you're saying, that everyone deserves a good street and a well cared for street, and that's certainly all of our goals. But that's why, I mean, as a committee, we're just kind of seeing what Dean and Mike were suggesting for next year.
And part of it too has to do with the fact that we just adopted a 5-year CIP that was kind of coming out of this 2-year CIP that was very different than our normal system of, usually we can kind of say like, oh, we're gonna, you know, we know what's coming 2 years away or whatever, and we really didn't at this point in time. So usually we would have probably had something in front of you a year or two even in advance to kind of show you this is kind of what we're looking at for street maintenance 2 years from now, and you at least kind of have it in the back of your head. But just because of how it all shook out, it's a bit of a different animal this time. as well. So,
All right.
just to let you know.
Did we have a motion on this yet?
Yep.
Move to approve.
Second?
We've got a motion and a second to approve. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Once
Thank
again,
you.
Dean, thank you very much, and best of luck in all your future endeavors. All right, discussion possible action to convene in a closed session pursuant to A.12. Wisconsin statute, section 1985, sub 1, sub C, to consider performance evaluation and compensation relating to the city administrator.
Move to go into closed session.
I'll second that.
Got a motion and a second to go into closed session. Roll call.
Morissette?
Yes.
Wakefield?
Yes.
Knutson?
Yes.
Kennedy?
Yes.
Brooke?
Yes.
Hall?
Yes.
Motion's approved. We're going into closed session. Step across the hall. All right, we are back in open session.
And I would like to move for a compensation increase for our city administrator to 6%. This reflects 4% in cost of living and an additional 2% for a total of 6%.
A second.
We got a motion, a second. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Very much appreciate
Yeah,
it.
thank you. Thank you. Have we made a decision on a second meeting in December? We normally don't do it.
I was gonna actually bring that up during this discussion. I mean, we have literally nothing for the agenda right now.
Cancel
And
it.
we usually cancel that second December meeting.
Right.
So if it's okay with the council, we cancel that second December meeting, and then we all get together on January 3rd, I believe.
That's Tuesday, by the way.
A Tuesday.
Yeah.
Tuesday, because of the holiday.
And as long as we're talking about meetings, we have to decide on December. I wanted to put out there, I am unavailable on the 17th of January, which is also a Tuesday, and I was hoping we'd consider another night that week. I know, I'm sorry.
Martin Luther King holiday?
Yep.
Is that one? Okay, yeah.
So it's set for Tuesday
Yep.
because Martin Luther King
Yes.
is on Monday that week. Okay.
Yep. So I think what Councilmember Brock is asking, could we do it Wednesday or Thursday that week? I don't think we have planning commission that week, do we? At 17?
Well, if we do, we could flip it to Tuesday
Yeah,
and,
we could actually do that if we had to. So if you want to
Or-
do council Wednesday.
yeah.
Or could we move the council meeting to the following Monday?
Or we could push it out to next Monday if you wanted to, too. That's fine.
And have
as well.
back-to-back Mondays.
I know we have some planning applications that are starting to roll through that might be impacted by dates as well.
So it might be better to do it that Wednesday if we're going to do it then, instead of pushing it a week.
planning commission with the stuff with, like, say, Cray Meadows, that's coming up, isn't it coming up?
That's
Like tomorrow.
tomorrow.
Yeah, okay.
I should just change it and let us know unless everybody needs to know
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can just actually send an email. to the
Obviously,
council,
there's
ask for
no
some dates.
concern here for,
Okay,
Okay.
we'll figure out the date.
Okay.
I'll
Thank
send an
you.
email to the
Canceling,
council.
we're canceling December 19th.
We are canceling the next December meeting. Yep.
I plan quite a few things in advance based on those Mondays, so I can't promise that I could come to a changed date. also, so,
I'll send out
yeah.
I'll send an email to the council. We'll see if we can figure something out.
well,
Go from there.
got it.
Yeah,
Okay.
that works.
Okay.
Just make sure that when Aaron sends his email out, that you respond directly back to him and not to the entire group.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
I just, a past council member had, and again, has passed Ron Troyer. I don't know if you all knew that he was a District 5 representative for a long time. Gentle giant, he
Yeah.
was a very nice guy.
It was very sad.
Thank you for that, Randy.
Yeah.
All right, and the last thing I've got is just, I would like to wish everybody a very, very Merry Christmas and a very Happy New Year, Happy Holidays to all, and look forward to seeing you next year, if not before.
Yeah, there you go.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Got a motion, second to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Stand adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.